Hi everybody. This is a lesson on this ribbon candy. I got the image online. There's a ton. So I just found this one. I can't remember where I got it, so I don't know if it was a free use photo. So that means that sure, I can use it to practice, but I can't sell my stuff. So just make sure you're using photos, depending on the purpose, use photos that are appropriate. You can, here, why don't you take a screenshot of that so you have it for later. And this is going to be in my IGTV later, so you can come back and get a screenshot if you can't find this exact image. And I think this was for an ad, so I don't think it was a free use photo. I think I just Google image searched ribbon candy. And I liked this one because it's showing different angles. So I'm going to show you this one right here, and then I'll show you how to use the same method to get these different angles. Open any size. I use usually 10 by 10 at 300 dpi. And go to the calligraphy category of the native brushes and go to streaks. So I played around with a bunch of different brushes and I settled on streaks, but there are quite a few, especially in this category, that work. And I originally did this illustration last year with just a regular monoline brush, but I really like this streaks brush for the streaks. And now I can't pinch, my hands are a little sweaty. So I just, you know, gives a little bit of a see-through look, which this candy does not have. It's very thick, but I just liked that look in this illustration. So I'm choosing this streak brush and I'm gonna go tap on it and I'm gonna make a change to it. So go into the Apple Pencil and turn pressure just to 0 for the size, and that just means that when you're pressing harder, it's not going to get thicker, wider. It's just going to almost be like a monoline brush in that sense. And then tap done. And that way I don't have a thin tail on one end. I just have a consistent look. So this is deceiving. This illustration stems from one S shape, and then we duplicate it. So let's go ahead and get started. I might be switching my glasses. I'm old, so I alternate between regular glasses and reading glasses, and I'm kind of at a mid-range in my sight right now, so we'll just, yeah, I do have my other ones with me. We'll see how it goes. I just played around with some backgrounds, so I'll tell you about that if we have time later. So for this, what I'm looking at is this curly area, just this very front white line. So you can see it has a little flip here. You can do that, or you can just let it come up flat like this one. I see the other end is flat, and then this swoop down kind of hides it, which is great. And I'm going to start with a dark color. It doesn't matter what color you go with. So just pick any color right now. You can change these colors later by using Alpha Lock. So I'm going to start, instead of starting with this white, I'm going to start with a red. Hold on, I need to adjust my little cord here because I'm bumping the camera. And if you joined late, please feel free to ask questions. I will stop every few minutes and look over. I have a snorty dog on the bed next to me. I'm in my bedroom, so if you hear weird sounds, it's my dog. So I'm looking at this, and you know, it's going away from you. So even though the top and the bottom look parallel, ideally, you know, that's probably a little bit narrower at this end than it is at this end. And I can see it kind of angles up at, you know, 15 degrees or something. So I drew these two lines. Oh, these I made it a different one already. So I drew two lines that are somewhat parallel, but they kind of taper at one end. So you can use any brush for that. Come over to monoline. Let's just start from that point. Any color, any brush, and draw a straight line. I wonder if you can see that. And then draw another one, let it snap straight, and I'm just kind of eyeballing that this end is wider than this end. And I am going to alpha lock that. I'm going to turn mine black so that you can see it better. And I also alpha locked it so I don't accidentally do any art on that layer. So I'm going to leave it alpha locked. And I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to go back to my red and to my streaks. If you joined late, go to streaks in calligraphy and go into the settings to Apple Pencil and turn the size down for the pressure. Let me do that one more time. Right here, just turn it to the 0. Right here. And I'm going, now the other thing I'm looking at is the overall look of these S's are straight up and down. So I'm not curving them in this direction to be perpendicular to my lines here. I'm still going straight up and down with the overall curls. So if you need a guideline for yourself, that's something that you could easily add to your guide here. Am I on a new layer? Yeah. So this takes a little bit of practice. I'm going to zoom in. It's going to be harder for me zoomed in because I have to make my S's in a bigger fashion here. I am on 22%, and that is, let me double check my canvas size. Yeah, I'm on a 10 by 10 inch canvas, so 3000 pixels because it's at 300 dpi, depending on where you are, and if you don't use inches. 3000 pixels wide, 300 dpi. And I'm on, so I said that because the percentage is different. If you're on a different size canvas, this is going to be a different number. So the approximate size that I'm looking for is going to be a different percentage. Okay, so take some time and practice these curls. And now my dog's barking. So I goofed here, so I will start over. It's nice that I have the pressure off, so I don't have to press hard. I'm going to come up to 34%. Gives me a little bit of a wider line. That's too wide because it closed my circle in there. Coming back down, sorry. Okay. So practice that for a while, and what you're looking for is how even are your loop-de-loos along the top and the bottom. So if you have some go up too high, you don't want that. Too low, you don't want that. And you don't want too much of a flip at the start or the end. You can start with a little bit of a curve. And the other thing you're looking for is that your curls are barely touching each other. That first one I usually try to overlap. So I kind of overlap it right there. And the other thing you want to look for is wider curls than this, because it's just going to look really squashed if you do narrow little loops. So make big loop-de-loops, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just get a few on the page. I try to do it all in one stroke, but I'm going to go ahead and keep going here. And then overall, it's still going straight up and down. It's not going perpendicular to this line. Hopefully that's noticeable. All right. Before we do anything else, we're going to look at this and we're going to decide if any little touch-ups need to happen, because this layer is going to get duplicated for the rest of it. This is the only thing you need to actually draw aside from some shading and highlighting. And with this brush, I like to just kind of touch up the very end here. Or you can switch. I like to stay in the same category. I went down to script brush and I just kind of finished off the end here, so it's not a stripy end point. We can turn those guidelines off, and we're going to add a clipping mask. So add a layer, tap it, turn it into a clipping mask. And before we do anything else, we're going to go up to just a blank layer, and we're going to play around a little bit with color and clipping masks. So let me get a, oh, I don't want to change the size of that. Oh, I'm on script still. So I'm going to get some red on the page. I'm going to get a nice solid green on the page, and then kind of a creamy whitish, not super white. Those are my three main colors today. You can do any colors you want. You could do, I don't know, other holiday colors besides Hanukkah colors like the blues and stuff. Excuse me. And we're going to go to a layer above it and just go to a white, put a streak across, go to a light gray, go to a slightly darker gray, and so on. You can go all the way to black. That one's pretty black, but it wasn't quite black. And what I'm going to do with this is practice the to see what different blend modes look like on top of these colors. I'm looking for a blend mode that's going to have some highlights with my whites or light grays and some shadows with my dark grays or blacks. That's going to look good on all of these colors, just because that's less work for me, and that'll make sense in a minute. Let's go ahead and turn that into a clipping mask, and that will just contain it to those three colors there, and play around with blend modes. You can go up to the top. Multiply looks great on this light gray, but it's still just kind of gray. I'm going to try to zoom in as much as I can here for you guys. Darken. Color burn. You can't see the white stripe at all. The darker colors look okay. Linear burn, you can't see the white. I'm just slowly going through. I know which one I'm going to end up on, but this is my process, so this is what I'm showing you. So remember, I'm looking for some darker areas and lighter areas, and I'm on overlay. So I like overlay for this use, and I like soft light. But you can keep going through and see, is there one blend mode that works for both purposes? That will give us fewer layers later. And this is a heavy layer project. So I'm on overlay. This is my white stripe. That looks pretty good. It's highlighting all three colors. The light gray is also a nice highlight. The darker gray looks great on the green. The almost black looks good for shadowing all three colors. It's not doing too much to the red, but I think I'm okay with that. And then the black is a little bit too much, although I could turn the opacity down on the layer, but if I do that, I'm also losing opacity on my highlighted area. So you can just go through. I think what I'm going to do is stick with overlay as my blend mode, using white for my highlights, and using this dark gray for my shadows. And now I can turn this back to normal so I can see exactly what color that gray is. I'm going to go ahead and take it off of clipping mask so I can really get a good sampling of what color that is. So you can set it back to how we had it. You don't need to use a clipping mask. You can see what that is doing on your blues over here too. All right, so that's just a nice way to kind of figure out some blend modes. And I did go with whites and grays because I know that that's what works for what I need. You don't have to use whites. You don't have to use a grayscale for blend modes, of course. So depending on what you're doing, you can do all sorts of colors and play around with blend modes. So we're going back to our swoopy layer here. And we're going to go ahead and do some of that shadowing and highlights. So if you think about where the shadows would be, where your light's coming from. So I have that clipping mask and I want to go to overlay. And I had that gray, I think right here. It was around here. It didn't save it right there. So I'm on a clipping mask. So the only areas where this is going to show up is right on top. I can already see that's not very dark because we're on that red. So I'm going to go darker because I want you to be able to see this. Can you see that? I'm going to wait for the delay. Veronica, Leo, and Mr. Avocado is watching. Okay, so this isn't showing up for me as much as I was hoping. So I am going to switch, let's see. Soft light shows up a little bit more. I wonder if my red ended up being a little bit lighter than I was using. All right, that works. So I just darkened my red a little bit and now I can see my shadows. So hopefully you can see those too. Let's see, that's on soft light. Overlay is about the same. Okay. So I'm going with all black for this red apparently, and that's just for the video's sake. It'll be a little too dark on the green when we get to green. So if my light is coming from over here, then anything that's on that side is going to be shadowed by this line, right? So the inside, ooh, that was big. The inside of these upper S's, for example, and we're just doing a loose style. We don't need to make it look perfect. And the inside of the lower S's, anything that's kind of facing that way. Or I guess if you're looking at it, if you were over here looking that way. And the other parts that would be shadowed, if you really want to get into details, you would have some shadows up in these little curves up here. Just where it's sinking down. And you would probably have them a tiny bit inside these curves, right? You would probably have them inside these curves too. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is on a clipping mask, so you can edit this later. See if there's any questions. No questions. And then we'll go to white and we'll do some of the highlights on this same layer. So the highlights are going to be, since our light was coming this way, they're going to be on the tops of these little curves. And I'm going with the curve as I add, but I can edit that later. And they're going to be down here on the bottom. And later we'll add a highlight to this very front edge, but this isn't quite the time to do that yet. Tap and hold the smudge tool to get that same brush as your smudge. And just do a tiny bit of kind of swooping here. I'm barely touching the screen. And it's important to spend time on this one. It's the only one you'll have to do because we're going to be duplicating this group. This base color that we did with the clipping mask. So once you have your shadows and your highlights where you want them, you need to group those two layers together. So the red with the clipping mask, and tap group. And then I just shrink it down like that. All right, so we're going to duplicate that. Now the lower one is going to be behind this. So that one, I'm going to go ahead and alpha lock that by 2 finger swiping to the right. Actually, I'm going to leave this one red too. Nope, I take that back. I'm going to turn it green, and that's only because I want you guys to be able to see this step better. So I'm going to pick a fairly dark green, although a little lighter than the sample ones. So it's alpha locked, so I can just tap fill layer. It's hidden behind this right now because we just duplicated it and we haven't moved it yet. But now we can select the whole group and we can slide it. So it's behind the red right now, and we're going to slide it out. So you can see it, it's just the same thing. I'm sliding it this direction. So I'm kind of looking at the top edge of these curls and making sure that I have, I don't have it in, you know, kind of offset too much. And I'm looking at the end of each little candy, each little swoop. The ends will line up when you're in the right spot too. See that? It's like a line. The other thing I'm looking for is if I've gone too far. And you can see the green, the overlay on the green is pretty dark. So I might go ahead and turn that one down a little bit. Yeah. So I just turn the opacity down on that clipping mask for the green layer. All right, so you can see that's the process for the whole thing, and you need to think about colors. So you can see the width of one. I like to tell myself that these smaller bands of color is 1 layer, and then these wider ones are 2 or 3 layers. Maybe this green is 2 layers and the red is 3 layers. So now we can start playing around with colors. And you need to remember though that you need to keep moving the one that's at the bottom in order for it to look like it's behind everything else. So duplicate that bottom one again, move to that lower one, select it and move it. Now you're not going to be able to see it super well because it's green on green. I like the look of the streaks. So even though I can see the edges of where my highlights are, I like the look of the streaks because the real candy does have those lines in it. And now I want another red one, so I can come back up to this red one and I can bring it all the way down below all the green ones and slide that one out. If I want a cream colored one next, you don't have to do the same color code as you see over there. I can alpha lock and add that cream color. And then slide that one out. Now I have a cream line. And let's duplicate that again and bring it all the way up and put that one in place in front of that red one. So you can see where I'm going with this. Can you do a tutorial how to draw characters? Sorry, I'm still practicing characters myself. All right, so you can do your color coding in any way that you want. Well, I'll show you the examples I did. So for this one, I did red, two layers of red and then white, 2 layers of green, white, 2 layers of red. With the overlay, you can flatten collapse the layers if you start running out of layers, and it will maintain that look. So when you're done getting all of your layers in place, you can go to a layer above everything that's not a clippy mask, go to white. I will just go to the script brush and add some highlights. It's going to be hard to see on my white layer here, so I'm going to turn this white layer off. So you can add highlights up here, just kind of little, I'm going to zoom way in. Follow the curve of the candy. So along the tops, add just kind of random little highlights. You can maybe hide that little seam we have with those two green ones. And then also along this front S, once you get some highlights here, it'll really kind of finish it off. Kind of defines that front edge really well. And I'm just kind of randomly putting them here and there. They would probably be more on these upper curves more than anywhere else. And you can see how nice it is that this curve is hidden back here. We didn't have to pay much attention to how it's lining up. We just paid attention to this end here, and I do have it a little bit off here. I also have a bit of a gap here, so you can go through and adjust the position of any of these. Maybe move it in a little closer. And once you spend time, like I said, on the very first S, go back up to that highlight layer. On the very first S, you're spending the most amount of time getting things kind of perfect. And then since that's duplicated, then you don't need to keep doing that. So you're seeing all these shadows back here. You can come in and kind of smudge those a little bit. Those green ones look kind of funny. So I can go to my green layers. Let's see, this one is the closer one. And I can smudge those a little bit. Because that overlay looked a little different on the green than it did on the red. And maybe smudge the top a little bit. You can also go ahead and combine. So maybe you want to flatten this green layer, although don't do that yet, sorry. So before you do any flattening, you're going to want to group everything. And hopefully you have enough layers, you can duplicate that group. And now you have another one you can work with. And you can do entirely different colors on that one. And now you can do whatever you want with this one. So just keep one that's not grouped, because you can go in and you can change the colors and you don't have to do the highlights every single time. So I would probably spend a little bit more time on where my greens are meeting. I feel like it kind of looks like this, but you got the overall hang of it there. And with this streaky brush, you can kind of see through it, and I kind of like that. But again, you can use just any brush, any monoline brush. I tested some brushes that were kind of messy on the edges, and I didn't like the look of those for this, but it would just give a different look. You can use the same technique. All right, to get different angles, so for this one, which is sort of like this one right here, I didn't finish it, I don't have the white down there. I did my S this direction, right? And then I moved my layers down each time. For this one, So it's more like that one. I did my S in this direction. I could have probably taken my original S for this and rotated it, but it might have been not this straight up and down at the right angle and all of that. So I just started over. And then when I duplicated, I moved them that way instead of that way. So it's kind of a puzzle in that sense for getting these different angles. You just need to figure out what direction to slide your layers. I didn't do any of the shadows and highlights on this one, or that one. I just wanted to throw those together to show you really quick. So you can see on this one, I spent a little more time than I can do on a quick tutorial. And it's a little bit more streaky, a little bit more painterly. Let's see if I can get it zoomed in really well. And I have one, I don't know where I have that. I have one that's a candy bowl with all of these in it, so that's kind of fun. I just did, for a shadow, I just kind of blobbed a shadow under here. All right, thanks for coming.